is the earthquake was shallow and was probably in the upper 10 kilometres of the crust.
Okay, so if you have a shallow earthquake, just explain to us, is that better in terms of the damage and destruction it's likely to cause?
Oh, it really depends. What may have happened, if it's a very shallow earthquake, a rupture may have actually occurred, so there may be a surface expression that people may see in the daylight in the region where it occurred. So that will help us actually focus exactly where the earthquake happened. Mm-hmm. Shallow earthquakes, especially in the local region, will normally generate more energy, so people could have felt it stronger in some parts and maybe weaker in other areas. So the depth of the earthquake doesn't matter too much if it's all Australian earthquakes are shallow earthquakes. So whether it was 10 kilometres deep or 30 kilometres deep, it wouldn't have too much difference for those people living 50 kilometres away, but those living right on top, they may have felt it stronger.
Okay, and in terms of where you said you can't identify exactly where it has hit, but in terms of the roundabout location, how prone is this area to earthquake activity?
Okay, I went back in the records and there was one of equivalent size, magnitude 5.3, back in 1969. So they do occur, but that's like, what's that, 40-odd years now. Typically in Victoria we get a number of magnitude 3s and magnitude 4 earthquakes, so these are quite rare.
Okay, and so when you say they're quite rare, we're not likely to see another one for a while, or it's hard to predict?
We cannot. I mean, earthquakes, seismologists have been trying to predict earthquakes for years, and we still haven't been able to do that, and we do not expect to be able to do that. So we have to base it on our probability, based on statistics of what earthquakes we've seen in the past. So we wouldn't expect something this big in the near future. However, we do expect there to be a number of aftershocks, and there has been a number of aftershocks since this main shock, and these have registered about magnitude 3.5 on the Richter scale. Wow. And these
is that what you'd expect from a 5?
And they were only generating about 1,000th of the energy of the main shock. So aftershocks, even though they will occur, they're actually going to be very small and not to be concerning to people.
Can we say do you know approximately how many of those have been felt so far?
Oh, there's probably been a dozen or so aftershocks that we've actually seen. Mm-hmm. Of only the larger ones would have been felt by those people in the local region nearest the earthquake, the main shock.
Okay, and how long are they likely to last for?
That's another good question, and we can't answer. It could be days or it could be weeks, but generally these will decrease in magnitude and in frequency in time. They may only last for a couple of days, but then you might get another magnitude 3 popping off in a couple of weeks. We really can't say, because every part of the Earth is different.
So we can't expect to see another 5.5, though, to say the least.
5.3, I'd be surprised if we did. Based on what we've seen in the past, I'd be really surprised.
Okay, so your reading is actually 5.3?
Yes.
Okay, because we did have reports of a preliminary reading of 5.5, but we should clarify that now that this 5.3 quake has hit 10 kilometres southwest of Morwell. Dr. David Jepson, very good of you to join us this evening. A number of questions are well answered there, so thanks so much for your time.
And one last thing I'd like to throw in.
Yes, please do.
You're hearing people about minor damage, and that's expected for an earthquake this size, a shallow earthquake. And minor damage could be about 25 kilometres from the epicenter, so I mean, it could be reasonably widespread in that local region.
Okay, just in your experience, you've got, so when you're saying within 25 kilometres of the epicenter, is the minor damage not necessarily going to be very apparent to people?
Well, a lot of the stuff will be like cracks
Structural?
And stuff they may see in their walls or in their floorboards and stuff like that. So they'll see that sort of damage.
But in terms of structural damage, which might not be so obvious to the eye?
Well, I'm not an engineer, but normally anything that's structural will have a crack associated with it, I would expect.
Okay. Dr. David Jepson, good of you, as I said, to join us. Thanks so much for bringing us up to date. So 5.3 from Dr. David Jepson, a seismologist there, who was just clarifying the size of this earthquake that we've seen here in Victoria. More reaction to the quake here. One musician actually caught on camera the moment that the quake struck on his YouTube page. Now, he says that he just hit record on his laptop and was about to start singing when he felt and heard the house move and everything started shaking. So this is how the quake unfolded for Nate.
Yeah.
So that was musician Nate, who had just hit record, about to record some music, but instead he got something very different, a different beat, if we can call it that. We will take a break here for a moment on Newsnight, and we'll bring you the very latest details on this 5.3 magnitude quake which has struck Victoria this evening. Stay with us. Hello, welcome to Newsnight, our continuing coverage of the earthquake that has hit Victoria this evening. We know it's a strong 5.3 earthquake rattling the state just before 9 p.m, with reports of a tremor being felt right across Melbourne, Dandenong's in the east, Bentley in the southeast and Pascoe Vale through the west. Now, the quake was felt as far north as Albury in New South Wales. The epicentre of the quake was about 10 kilometres southwest of the town of Morwell, which is around 118 kilometres from Melbourne. The tremor hit at 8:53 Eastern and lasted for around 30 to 40 seconds. Now, the Geoscience Australia website crashed as people began flocking online to try and find out what had happened. There have been reports of minor damage, and to bring us up to date with the very latest, we're joined now by our Melbourne Bureau Chief, Aaron Young. Aaron, now you have some updates for us on the SES, who've been advising us throughout the evening what numbers people should call if they indeed do have a problem. So far, no serious reports of damage and no serious injury, thankfully.
No, that's right. I just first want to start off by saying that this is the largest earthquake in 3 decades now, we're being told. 5.3, it did start off as a 5.2, then it was upgraded to a 5.5 by Geosciences Australia. They said at the time that that was preliminary. It now has been downgraded just slightly to a 5.3. We understand, though, a very shallow earthquake, just 10 kilometres deep. That's how it was spread right across the whole state. That's what we're hearing now from seismologists. But according to the SES, in this alert that they've put out, they say earthquake advice for the Latrobe Valley and for Gippsland. A 5.3 magnitude earthquake has occurred in the Latrobe Valley area, felt across Victoria. The assessments are still being made, but at this stage there are no reports of significant damage. What they say, though, is that the potential impacts in your area for those people who live in that area, and in fact right across Melbourne, we've been receiving reports, of course, right across Victoria, minor building cracks or damage, minor damage to roads, rails and bridges, minor disruption to phone and communications. They say that for people, this is the information, what to do. Stay informed, monitor the local conditions, be aware of the situation, be aware that aftershocks may occur and could cause damage. Check for hazards or damage in and around your home. Check for cracks or damage in roofs, walls, also chimneys, and if your home is damaged, turn off the power, the gas and the water at the mains. Do not re-enter damaged buildings. Stay clear of fallen trees, and perhaps the main one that they're trying to get across at the moment, please, if you need any earthquake assistance from the SES, call 132 500. They have been inundated, as too has 000, the emergency services. Now, Geoscience Australia's website, as you mentioned, has crashed, but it is in fact back up and running now. I'm just having a look at it here on my iPad, but certainly no information on the front screen about this. They do at least give some information further through on that website, though, about what this actually has been. So certainly a site to keep an eye on as well, rather than hitting those telephone lines for more information. But in terms of just the size of this earthquake, we were at first told that it was, as I say, a 5.5. That would have been the largest in 109 years, but it has been downgraded to 5.3. Not too much of a downgrade. There was an earthquake back in the 80s. That happened in Warrnambool. That was also a 5.3. There was some major damage there back in Warrnambool during the 1980s when that actually occurred. But what we have heard tonight is that there have now been around 6 aftershocks reported from people who are in their homes in that area. down in that area. We also heard from an interview that we had just earlier with seismologists as well, talking about how the damage would have been seen around 25 kilometres from the epicenter, given how shallow that it actually was. Only minor damage, of course, no reports of any injuries at this stage, but certainly enough to give people a rude awakening, certainly a bit of a shock to have this happen. They're talking about how for some people there were cracks. There's also been plasterboards which have fallen from the sides. That we've had photographs come through to us of smashed glass. Of course, one of the main things that they talk about during earthquakes and things like this is to stay out of damaged buildings and to be very careful, particularly with children and animals around broken glass and debris, to wear boots or sturdy shoes to keep yourself from cutting your feet. Certainly in terms of earthquakes and the damage that we're receiving, it is a minor earthquake from that in terms of the damage that we've had reports of so far. But still, it never, of course, pays. It always pays to be very careful at times like this. 35 calls with the SES say that they have received so far. No major damage, as I say, loose plaster, everything from Morwell and Morwell and also Traralgon. Those are the main areas. So down where they, of course, pump out the coal and where, of course, most of Victoria's power consumption is filled. That's where the power generators are. Those Hazelwood power plants are down in that way as well. So no reports at this stage that the power supply has been affected. What we have been told, though, is phones and communications. There have been some disruptions to telephone services down there as well, but people are being told to turn on the radio, turn on the TV. That's the way to find out at this stage. Stay off the phones in those areas just in case the emergency services, and I myself have already seen a number of SES crews flying through the city with lights and sirens blaring, so if they need to get somewhere and if the mobile phone system needs to be used, then it should be, of course, used by those people who need it to stay off 000. So that's the news we're getting from the SES at this stage. We'll keep you up to date, Sharon.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Now we'll go to Lachlan Quick, who is with the Victoria SES. Lachlan, thanks very much for your time. I know you're going to be very busy there this evening. Do you have any further update on the number of homes that have been damaged? We're hearing reports of something like 35 calls for help so far.
Yeah, it looks as though we could probably scale that back. That was overall calls over that period, Sharon. So it's probably closer to 20 to 25 directly related to the earthquake impacts. As you've already heard, low-level impacts at this stage, and thankfully no injuries or worse. We know it has been felt over probably half the state, and it's certainly the largest earthquake that I've been involved in my time here. Our main concerns now would be just advising people, if they have suffered structural damage, to steer clear of their property, stay with neighbours or friends for the evening and have that property professionally assessed in the light of day. You don't want to be in a situation where the structural integrity has been compromised. So any damaged properties that looks like it may be structural, please avoid that situation for your own safety.
And it's difficult with people this evening. They're not really going to know that until the morning, are they?
That's true. So we would urge people to err on the side of caution and just try and stay with some family or friends. We know that there's probably some widespread impacts that people won't see until the morning, but if they feel unsafe, the best option is always to seek an alternative accommodation only for the night and then have some professional assessments tomorrow.
Lachlan, can you tell us, we heard reports there from Aaron Young of interruption to phone, water and power in some areas. Do you have any update on that front?